June 1944, Northern France. General Johannes Blaskowitz does not believe in luck, he believes in geometry. The illusion of invincibility is not a feeling here, it is a physical measurement. Before him sits the Atlantic Wall. It is the largest engineering project in human history. It is not a wall, it is a formula. The German High Command, the OKW, has standardized death. They call it Regelbau. Every bunker is a blueprint. Every firing arc is pre-calculated. The Type 611 bunkers are the nodes of this circuit. Their walls are 3.5 meters of steel-reinforced concrete. To Blaskowitz, the Allied invasion is a simple subtraction problem. The Allies have ships. The Atlantic Wall has kinetic energy. The OKW projections are cold. A frontal assault will result in a 75% casualty rate in the first hour. Physics says the beach will hold. But Blaskowitz is a professional. He looks at the natural tax of war. He knows that for every man hit by a bullet, 3 more will die of the infection that followed. His medics carry the 4.6 kilogram sanitetstash. Inside, bandages, gauze, and sulfonamides. The sulfonamides are the pinnacle of German chemistry. They are good enough. Blaskowitz calculates that the Allies face the same biological reality. Nature is a neutral player. Sepsis does not take sides. It is a mathematical certainty. The Allied system will break against the concrete and the survivors will rot in the mud. He watches the horizon, confident in the 3.5-meter shield. He is right about the physics. He is right about the geometry. But he has forgotten to check the arithmetic of the microscopic. He assumes the enemy is bringing soldiers. He doesn't realize they are bringing a factory that manufactures miracle. Blaskowitz's miracle is made of concrete. Churchill's is made of mold. The German general counts his batteries, but he ignores the silent reaper, Staphylococcus aureus. It is the oldest killer on the battlefield. Historically, the natural tax is non-negotiable. In every conflict since the dawn of gunpowder, infection has claimed more lives than lead. The arithmetic of the Great War still haunts the medical manual. A compound fracture is a coin toss, a mortality rate exceeding 50%. If the bone breaks the skin, the clock starts. The medical corps calls it the golden period. It is a window of exactly 6 to 12 hours. Within this time frame, a soldier is a patient. Beyond it, he is a biological casualty. Once sepsis becomes irreversible, the blood turns to poison. The soldier becomes a corpse. Blaskowitz trusts his logistics. Every German medic carries the 4.6 kilogram sanitetstash. It is a professional kit, high-quality gauze and sulfonamide. But the Reich's chemistry has hit a ceiling. Sulfonamides are merely a delay tactic. They inhibit, they do not execute. To the German logic, the natural tax is a universal constant. If an American is hit, he rots just as fast as a German. But the Allied system has stopped viewing death as an inevitability. To the planners in Washington, a wounded soldier is no longer a tragedy. He is a repairable asset. They have industrialized the golden period. While the Germans refine the thickness of their steel, the Allies have refined the recovery of the soul. Blaskowitz believes in the 3.5-meter wall. He does not know that the Allies have already bypassed his concrete with a chemical coup d'etat. He expects a fight between men. He is about to face a war against extinction itself. The German army is built to withstand a 45-ton tank, but it is utterly defenseless against a 45-ton idea. The 45-ton idea is intangible. The 45-ton Panther tank is not. It is the apex of German mechanical theology. While the Allies focused on a system, the Third Reich perfected the machine. The Panther was designed to make Allied armor a mathematical impossibility. Its primary weapon, the 7.5 text, CMKWK $42L70. This was not just a gun. It was a high-velocity scalpel. It could penetrate 111 text, $. Of armor angled at 30 $, from a distance of 1000 text, meters $. For the Allied crews in their Sherman, the Panther was a death sentence delivered at 935 meters per second. Underneath, the hull sat the Schachtelauf work. This interlocking road wheel system was a masterpiece of weight distribution. It allowed the massive machine to traverse soft terrain that would swallow lesser vehicles. It provided a stable firing platform. It was German engineering at its most arrogant, complex, demanding, and utterly dominant. To the German high command, the Panther was the hard shell. They believed that if you make the shell thick enough and the sting long enough, the army becomes immortal. They viewed the war as a series of kinetic engagements. One Panther should, by all data points, destroy 5 Sherman. The arithmetic of the battlefield seemed to favor the steel, but the German logic had a blind spot. They perfected the shell, but they neglected the biology inside it. They built a tank that could withstand a 75 text $mm shell, but they forgot to calculate for the microscopic. They were winning the battle of the machine while already losing the battle of the blood. The Panther was invincible until the man inside it was not. The Panther is a fortress, but its crew is made of carbon and blood. If a jagged piece of a 75 text $mm shell, just a few grams of hot steel, breaks the skin, the fortress is breached from within. Germany's defense against this breach was Prontossel. Chemically, it was a masterpiece of the IG Farben laboratories. Its mechanism, competitive inhibition. It is a molecular trick. The drug mimics para-aminobenzoic acid, or PABA. The bacteria, seeking PABA to synthesize folic acid, consume the Prontossel instead. They don't die instantly. They just stop growing. They are starved, not executed. It was a passive defense. Like the 3.5 text meter dollar walls of the Type 611 bunkers, it was designed to hold the line, not to win the territory. It was a stalemate on a microscopic scale. If a soldier's immune system was already exhausted by the frozen mud of the East or the humidity of the West, Prontossel reached its limit. The infection remained, waiting for the drug to fade. The German high command viewed biology as a constant, a natural tax that could be managed but never abolished. They believed the rate of sepsis was a law of thermodynamics, as fixed as the range of a KWK-42 gun. But across the Atlantic, the Allied equation had shifted. They weren't looking for a molecular stalemate. They were looking for a biological blitzkrieg. While Berlin focused on slowing the enemy down, the labs in Peoria were learning how to wipe them off the map. The Germans had perfected the shield. The Allies were about to manufacture the sword. The sword is not forged, it is fermented. In 1941, penicillin was a laboratory secret, grown painstaking in thousands of glass milk bottles. This was surface culture, slow, fragile, and artisanal. If the Allies were to survive the 7.5 text CMKWK-42 and the 3.5 text meter dollar concrete walls of the Atlantic Wall, they couldn't rely on artisans. They needed a system. The system was found in Peoria, Illinois. The American system did not view penicillium as a miracle. It viewed it as a production bottleneck. The transition was brutal and efficient. They abandoned the bottles for 10,000-gallon deep tank fermentation vats. To keep the organism alive at this scale, they utilized aerobic agitation, forcing sterilized air through the broth at high pressure. Then they found the catalyst, corn steep liquor, a viscous byproduct of the local corn milling industry. It was biological high-octane fuel. The result was not a gradual increase. It was a total industrial. Yields of the life-saving mold increased by exactly 500 times dollar. To the war planners in Washington, this wasn't medicine. It was throughput. They treated the mold like the production of 75 text $mm shells or the 7 text ton P-47 Thunderbolt. It was a mechanical formula. Input corn liquor, output survival. While the official record remained silent on the exact moment the German OKW realized their natural tax was being subverted, the implications suggest a total failure of German intelligence. They were still refining the quality of their steel armor. The Americans were refining the quantity of their biological armor. But a factory is only half of the equation. A miracle in a vat in Illinois is useless to a soldier bleeding out in a French hedgerow. The Allies had achieved the mass. Now they faced a different law of physics. They had to freeze the miracle without killing it. The miracle is a liquid. In its raw form, it is useless on a battlefield 6,000 km from the fermentation vat. It degrades at room temperature. It spoils in the heat of a 2.5-ton CCKW cargo truck. To weaponize biology, the Allies had to master the physics of the void. The solution was lyophilization, high vacuum freeze drying. The process is a mechanical Cold War against chemistry. The penicillin broth is flash frozen. Then, massive vacuum pumps extract the atmosphere. Under high vacuum, the ice does not melt into water, it sublimates. It transitions directly from a solid to a vapor. What remains is a dry, golden powder. It is shelf-stable. It is light. It can be crated alongside 155 artillery shells and shipped across the Atlantic in the holds of Liberty ships. But a weapon requires a standard. You cannot fire a shell if the caliber is unknown. You cannot heal a soldier if the potency is a guess. The Allied system standardized the Oxford unit. This was a mathematical definition of life, the specific amount of penicillin required to inhibit a standard culture of staphylococcus in a controlled environment. Suddenly, survival was quantifiable. Millions of vials, each calibrated to a precise Oxford unit count, flowed through the logistics chain. The Allies weren't just shipping medicine. They were shipping return-to-duty time as a standardized industrial component. To the planners in London, a crate of penicillin was a calculated input into the total war machine, no different from a shipment of 12.7 ammunition. While historians still debate the counterfactuals of an unmedicated D-Day, the implications suggest that without this cold chain, the Allied system would have bled out in the surf. By June 1944, the Allies had mastered the physics of preservation. Now they were ready to trigger the arithmetic of production. The Germans were counting bullets. The Americans were about to count in the trillion, and the count began with a deluge. Trillions are not just numbers, they are a strategic flood. Scaling a living organism is not a biological problem, it is an industrial one. In 1943, the Allied system was merely testing the pipes. Total production for the year, 400 million units. It was enough for a few thousand men, a laboratory curiosity. By June 1944, the month of the Great Crusade, that number hit 2.3 trillion units. This was the arithmetic of the surge. The Allies didn't pray for a miracle, they manufactured a surplus. They treated the production of penicillium like the assembly of the 105-text howitzer. It was a standardized factory process. 21 different pharmaceutical firms were drafted into a single, cohesive engine of output. The efficiency was brutal. The price collapse serves as the ultimate metric of this victory. At the start of the program, a single dose cost $20. It was a luxury item. By the time the first boots hit the sand at Omaha, the price had been crushed to $0.003. Life had become an inexpensive commodity. To the German OKW, every soldier lost was a subtraction from a finite pool of warrior. To the Allied planners, a casualty was merely a temporary equipment failure. If the cost of repair, the cost of a life, is only 3 cents, the mathematical threshold for victory shifts. The Germans were still betting on the individual brilliance of the 45-ton Panther and its commander. The Allies were betting on a system where survival was cheaper than a pack of cigarettes. But survival on the assembly line is one thing. Survival on the front line is a matter of flesh and bone. The arithmetic of production was about to collide with the arithmetic of the grave. The arithmetic of the grave is rewritten by the arithmetic of maintenance. In the German model, the machine is the unit of value. They struggle to output 200 Panther tanks a month. Each is a 45-ton marvel of engineering. Each requires specialized labor. Each is irreplaceable. To the German high command, the man inside is a pilot, a secondary component. The Allied system reverses the polarity. It views the soldier as the primary hardware. This is the logic of the teeth-to-tail ratio. For every American tooth, the infantryman with his 4.4 kg M1 Garand, there is a massive biological tail, a logistics chain of doctors, nurses, and chemists. While the Germans focus on repairing gears, the Allies focus on repairing cells. The results are mathematically devastating. If an American soldier is wounded but reaches a field hospital, the system triggers a near-perfect recovery cycle. The survival rate hits an unprecedented 97%. This is not just a triumph of mercy. It is a triumph of throughput. The Allies are not just fighting with more men. They are fighting with the same men, recycled through the medical system and returned to the front. A veteran wounded in July is back in his foxhole by September, protected by his biological armor. In contrast, the German army is a machine that cannot replace its parts. Every casualty is a permanent subtraction. Every infection is a win for the Allied formula. To the planners in London, the German army is no longer an opponent. It is a coordinate on a map waiting for the inevitable subtraction of its manpower. The German logic remains fixed on the strength of the shell. But as the shells begin to crack, they realize their fundamental error. They calculated the force of the impact, but they failed to calculate the resilience of the flesh. The realization is dawning on the OKW. You cannot win a war of attrition when the enemy has deleted the cost of attrition. The logic of the fortress is about to become the logic of the oven. The fortress has become a kiln. The 3.5-meter reinforced concrete walls of the Atlantic Wall were designed to repel the kinetic energy of 406-text naval shells. They were not designed to stop a micro. For the German 7th Army retreating across the 200-text km of French hedgerows, the natural tax has become a total liquidation. Without penicillin, the arithmetic of the German retreat is a death spiral. Historical reports from the Normandy campaign suggest that secondary infection rates for wounded soldiers in the 7th Army reached as high as 30%. A splinter of steel from a 75-text shell isn't just a wound, it's a slow-motion execution. The German soldier is trapped in a mechanical formula that ends in sepsis. Across the line, the Allied system has deployed the invisible shield. An American paratrooper knows that if he is hit, the 10,000-text gallon-dollar vats in Peoria have already secured his future. He is not a warrior to be sacrificed in a heroic cult of death. He is a modular component to be serviced and reinstalled. This psychological advantage is a force multiplier that cannot be measured in the weight of a 45-ton Panther or the range of a gun. The German logic breaks. They realize they are fighting an enemy that has deleted the concept of attrition. The OKW views the battlefield as a stationary equation, but the equation fails when one side can industrialize the recovery of the flesh. While historians still debate if the German collapse was purely mechanical, the biological implications suggest the Reich was rotting from within before the first Allied tank reached the Rhine. Churchill looks at the recovery charts. He sees the 97% survival rate. He doesn't see a medical report. He sees a surrender document written in the language of the laboratory. But there is one final, darker calculation to be made. If the Allies have the power to manufacture life, they also have the power to decide who is denied it. The system is about to face its ultimate moral stress test. The moral stress test begins with a gatekeeper. His name is Winston Churchill. The Allied system was never just about healing. It was about the selective application of survival. In the classification hierarchy of 1944, penicillin was not listed under medicine. It held a classification a 1 priority status, a tier reserved for the 2-text billion-dollar Manhattan Project. It was a strategic asset, as critical as the 52-700-text ton-dollar Tirpitz was to the German surface fleet. Technically unverified but part of veteran lore, the Churchill-Fleming secret protocol suggests a cold, Darwinian calculation. Legend claims Churchill personally intervened to ensure that not a single unit of the 3-text trillion-dollar produced would reach the Red Cross for Axis prisoner. The logic was binary. Why repair the enemy's hardware? The official record remains silent on a formal ban, but the implications suggest a deliberate bottleneck. Churchill's 1944 memo regarding strategic medical reserves emphasized that the system must prioritize the restoration of Allied combat effectiveness above all humanitarian variable. To the planners, a German soldier with a 30% chance of sepsis was not a human in need. He was a problem that would eventually solve itself through biological attrition. While historians still debate the counterfactuals of this biological blockade, the math is undeniable. By withholding the cure, the Allies turned the German army's lack of industrial biology into a terminal defect. They treated the German casualty rate as a fixed mechanical formula, a slow-motion demolition of the Reich's remaining manpower. The natural tax was no longer natural. It was being enforced by a British prime minister with a pen and a vial. Churchill realized that he didn't need to kill every German soldier with a 75 text shell. He just had to wait for the arithmetic of the grave to finish its work. The triage of empires was complete. Now, only the final tally remained. The final tally is not a body count. It is a resurrection count. By late 1944, Churchill is presented with a set of recovery charts that defy the history of warfare. The data represents the triage of empires. To a man who lived through the slaughter of the Great War, these numbers are a mathematical impossibility. The system has achieved total casualty reclamation. Over 100,000 Allied soldiers are back in their units, men who, by the standards of 1918, would already be buried in the soil of France. This is the logistics of mercy functioning as a brutal force multiplier. It is the equivalent of 10 entire divisions appearing out of thin air, fully trained and battle-hardened. Churchill realizes the shift. The war is no longer about the kinetic destruction of the German soldier. It is about the biological preservation of the Allied one. While the Germans struggle to transport a single 45-ton Panther across a bombed-out rail line, the Allies are transporting the ability to keep an entire army alive in small, glass vials. Every American or Briton returned to duty represents a failure of the German formula. The Reich's 7.5 text CMKWK $42 guns can hit their targets, they can penetrate the armor, they can tear the flesh, but they can no longer keep the enemy down. The Allies have industrialized the second chance. To the analytical mind of the Prime Minister, the conclusion is cold and absolute. You cannot defeat an enemy that can recycle its own life force. The Germans are fighting a war of subtraction. The Allies are fighting a war of infinite addition. The individual brilliance of the German commander has been rendered obsolete by the arithmetic of the American lab. The system has won, but as the smoke clears, a new reality emerges. The war didn't just end, it evolved. The era of the great man is dead. The era of the industrial organism has begun. The era of the great man is dead. The era of the industrial organism has begun. History remembers Rommel's tactical maneuvers and Guderian's armored thrusts. But in the final calculation, individual genius is a rounding error. The Allied system did not outsmart the German commanders. It outproduced their mortality. The war reached its terminal phase when German hard engineering, the 45-ton Panther and the 3.5-meter bunker, was overwhelmed by Allied soft biology. A tank can be destroyed by a single 75 text shell. A factory process that manufactures life at the rate of 2.3 trillion units per month is indestructible. This was the birth of a new world order. The system did not dismantle itself in 1945. It pivoted. The labs in Peoria and the production lines in Brooklyn underwent a permanent metamorphosis. Pfizer and Merck transitioned from specialized chemical labs into the big pharma titans of the modern age. They moved from wartime emergency to peacetime dominance. The logistics chain that carried penicillin across 6,000 km of ocean became the backbone of global medicine. The official record remains silent on exactly when Churchill realized that the bullet had lost its finality, but the implications suggest he saw it in the survival charts of 1944. The American system had treated the enemy as just coordinates on a map, but it treated its own soldiers as a rechargeable battery. Industrial throughput was destiny. The war was won by the arithmetic of the vat, not the courage of the sword. The Germans banked on the superiority of the machine. The Allies built a machine that was life. The cliffhanger of logic remains. In a world where life can be manufactured in 10,000-gallon tanks, who truly holds the power? We have mastered the biology. Now, we must survive the system that controls it.